When you see a video like that, you probably know that it's not a day zero. Maybe it is when idea comes to public like day zero, but the whole thing started earlier. Thought of 500 reasons why not to do it. You always have 500 reasons why not to do anything. For example, I have Belarusian audience who speaks Belarusian and Russian and doesn't speak English. And I made my most recent video a year ago, even a bit of more than a year ago. And the topic is completely different. It seems, but it's not. Was not too confident about accent I have or don't have. You may write a comment whether I do have any accents or not very much. Would be very interested to hear that. I know that this is an important point at which I should make this. I should share some practical advice. There will be a couple of those. And I need to share this fragment of my story. Let me tell you how this whole epic thing started out, what I want to achieve with it, and who am I working for. The year basically started with me explaining how to use techniques which I use basically since childhood to achieve some greater creative results, to be more inventive and just to play with your life. It sounded really dangerous, play with your life. Well, basically to play with your everyday life, to play with the things you do, and to have a very different attitude towards it. Right at New Year night, I was giving a masterclass on different techniques. If you are interested in writing, in creativity, in maybe calligraphy, in things like that, you probably know something. But if you are, for example, a student, it will be very applicable to you. But what if you are not? That's the thing I'm doing now. Is the first thing that I'm creating for a larger audience, a more wide audience. I don't know how many people will watch this video. Done many quite interesting things like documentary films, art projects, visual art, a video production, film production that I'm building as well. And I've been doing it for the last 10 years, since I was 13 basically. But this here is the first thing that I'm doing for a greater audience. I was in a rut for a couple of years. I was just not actually depressed, but well, my ideas were kind of depressed. And I couldn't do anything really creative. I was just doing repetitive things that didn't give me any satisfaction or value. That was how I was feeling for a couple of years. But then I found a way out, and part of it were techniques which I used before and which I use now and which I also want to share. But the thing I am creating now is not just wider, it's very complex. If you're a student, a school student, university student, you may have stumbled upon different ways to make a conspect, to write, to remember things. If you are passing exams, of course, you do want to pass them, and you can try different tricks to do that. I was very fortunate because when I was in school, I had two separate teachers, who have taught me two amazing techniques. Well, first point was a technique of doing conspects in a visual, very playful manner, when you don't need to write words, when you don't need to write everything letter by letter, like I actually do in my art, but when you are just thinking in images, in visual forms, in how your mind, in how your thoughts flow one into another. When you think in terms of that and remember that, that was first thing. And the second was mind maps. Maybe some of you are familiar with the concept of mind map. It's also a kind of visual, even geographical representation of what you remember. But I had two teachers who taught me those two techniques, and since that time, since I was 12, I have a notebook with me each day. This notebook I have is from 2014, and it's filled with schemes like this. with mind maps, with very different forms of writing, and this was kind of my system of thought. That was how I viewed the world, developed ideas, developed thoughts. I started to write screenplays for movies. I started to write poems quite often. I started to do another creative things, which led me to my career path, to things I view now as very important to me. But the start was basically there. I was making lots of those maps, schemes, conspects in very different creative manners, not just things that were in school, but also things I learned just separately in home. For example, about film, about art, about cities, about places in the world. I conspected many things with those quite playful notes. It was very fun, and it is very fun because I use very similar formats now, just a bit more structured and a bit more clear. Even this video that I'm making is basically structured like this. I know what I would like to talk about, but I don't write line by line by line. What I'm talking about now is almost a base of the thing I'm creating, a base of this startup. A startup consists not only of this. This is like a most basic technique which is played with in it. Each day of this year was basically me getting closer and closer to the idea that I need to come up with a very clear, understandable and usable system for creative people, for people who want to make their everyday life more curious and playful, who are maybe stuck in some kind of rut as I was before. Easy, playful thing, which will have it is on the intersection of game, of art, of technology, of fashion and of self-improvement. For if you combine all of those, you get this operating system that I'm creating, and it's of course a technology. It's a technology that I'm building day by day. I understand how those practices work, how to make them effective, beautiful and playful at the same time, and how to implement them. And this will be quite a long journey, like a year worth of journey. I do have a thought how it will look like in final, but I understand that when I do those studies, when I talk with people, when I try to implement it and to test it, day by day, month by month, it may change quite significantly. So I don't know what exactly will turn out, though I have a vision to it. And I want it to be very helpful to lots of people, to a very wide range of people who are now maybe like me before, dependent on various technologies, on gadgets, maybe too much, as you feel. With this operating system, I want to make life more curious, playful and interesting and creative. As if, for example, I'm too dependent on technology, I'm worried that it takes more and more of my life. I'm worried that everything now is in my computer, and I want for my life to be more creative and playful in real physical world. The first type of person I want to help with this, and I am basically now starting some of the tests to see how it works and how to make it better. And the first practical thing I would like to recommend to any of you, it doesn't depend whether you do some creative stuff or whether you are just making some notes on the way to the market. Whatever you do should not structure your notes, your brain into a concrete format like into lines. You shouldn't write like in a book. You are not writing a book here. A book, this format in which we are usually writing, in which most of us were taught to write in. It's the format of how we can transfer knowledge from one person to another. If you see, for example, some of my conspects and you try to read it, of course, you will not understand anything. I should either speak to you or show you a writing where everything is like from beginning to end, like in this book, left to right or right to left, depending on the culture you're in. But when you are making notes to yourself, when you try to remember something, to generate ideas, to implement something new in your life, the first thing to understand is that notes, that text, that thoughts are not so linear, that the way the mind thinks may be very different from it. It may take various forms, it may take this form as well, but it's much more varied, much more diverse than that. And this will be a first thing to understand and to practice. Just try to, the next thing you are writing, try to write as much non-linear as you can. You try making a mind map. Google what is mind map. That may be a good start. I'm fascinated how many people do not actually know, and if you are a student, a scholar, if you need to research lots of information, to remember lots of information, it's just a no-brainer. Your life will be so much simpler if you've done that. You would remember information and come up with ideas for some texts, for example, much simpler. And actually, when it comes to idea generation, I will share some practical things in next videos of mine. But for just remembering things, for comprehending them and putting them into your mind, this is fascinating. This is just amazing. Try it out. And overall, do know that your thoughts, your mind, your ideas is not linear like text. It's more of clouds of thoughts, of threads warping one into another. I make art called verse informs. Those are poems, texts, which were converted letter by letter into visual images, like the one you see here, for example. And that is basically handwriting, like on maximum settings. Why this time, though? The year 2024, in my opinion, is a very significant year. It's a year where we see lots of very new technologies being put out. And I know many people who are kind of pressed by all of this. I'm worried that technology takes more and more of my life. I'm worried that I am more and more dependent on them. I'm worried that all my life is in my computer, my work, my relaxation, my communication is all there, my ideas are also there. In a few days, we will have Apple Vision Pro released, a new VR headset, which should probably popularize this VR and AR things. We see much more progress in artificial intelligence. We see many things developed by OpenAI and other AI companies. We see this new thing that should replace our phone called Rabbit R1. And this year is very rich, very saturated, maybe even oversaturated for those kinds of gadgets and technologies. What I'm coming up with this year is also a technology, exactly a technology. It's on the contrary, it's very different from all those technologies. It's basically a reinvention of how we think, how we write, how we operate in our daily life. It's much more playful, much more simplistic. I learn more and more about how people put their ideas, how they develop them, how they come out of any kind of being stuck with ideas or in certain situations. And I try to go out of my comfort zone, out of my bubble for this. So I know that the basic technology that is being made now, it's based upon handwriting. It's a real startup for me as a person who did art for most of my life. This is a very new kind of thing, but I feel that it's very important in this exact moment. And for each day this year, I'm coming up with new things to implement here. I'm really talking to people, and it just blows my mind how this may work and what we will see in this story. So if you are also interested to see how will this develop, to see more of very practical everyday tips for being very curious, creative, and playful with your everyday life, you should probably subscribe. Write me a comment on how do I speak, because it's first video of this kind for me in English. English is not my native language. I speak in Belarusian normally. I write in Belarusian as well. So very interested how you overall view this video. What do you think on some of the ideas that I've talked about here? And what did you actually implement in your life regarding different handwriting practices, regarding note-taking, regarding mind maps, maybe regarding anything like that? Would be very interested to hear your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video, and goodbye.